Testing. 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 Well, this doesn't work at all. Testing? Okay, it does kind of work. Okay. Alrighty. There's no one here yet, so let's get a little bit slower here. We'll call this channel. Discord channel. It's going to be an int. Lifespan. Default lifespan. I don't think we need that. Let's say heartbeat interval. Max messages. Welcome, welcome. Those who are here. I am just putting some of these variables up here. Just so we don't have to mess with weird looking configs. Do this, get rid of these commas. Come here and copy these and move them down here. So right now all the default values for these are basically stored inside this, so I'd rather not have that. That's why I'm moving to this, like that. So now all of our default argument or default values for the quarks are stored up at the top, so you don't have to know them. I think we're also going to get rid of this variable right here, and we're going to make this just channel ID. So today is going to be the day that we release this bot, so you guys will finally get to play with it on the channel. This is the bot debug channel. Unindent not expected. What the fuck does that mean? And got our normal configuration here. Let's put the normal papers here. This is the papers channel. Papers. Get rid of this. The simplification. Let's go back down. We don't need any of this. This can now be just a standalone variable here. We can get rid of this. Alrighty. Channel ID, all of these are fine. Alright, go up here. Do we want to toggle here? Probably, right? So let's do this. Let's have a debug mode toggle, a little boolean that we can turn on and off. right? Copy like that, make a false. Comment that out, and then put it behind this if debug mode, like that. And put this here. So basically what we're doing is we're putting all of our magic values up here at the top. You know, there's a lot of different ways to do config management in Python. You could use config packages like omega config or gin config, and then have basically these separate files that store those values for you. You could put the values just directly in the quargs, kind of like maybe you could put 10 here. You can put the variables and feed them in kind of whenever you actually run it. So we could have put them here, right? We could have put the default values here. There's a lot of different places to put default values. All of them suck is the answer. So it's just about which one sucks less. I think this one sucks less because it's easy for a person to just come here and they can see all the default values. Okay. So I added a couple variables to this bot. I added things such as a lifespan, which is kind of an automatic timeout. I think, for example, in the debug mode, we would probably want the lifespan to be 1. Just lives for 1 hour. The heartbeat is every 10 minutes, or let's say 5 minutes. Let's say 10 minutes. The max number of messages, let's say 3. And the max message interval, so how many messages, 3 messages per X amount of time, let's say 3 messages per minute is the maximum amount of messages it should be able to answer. And then auto messages interval, this is how often it sends this kind of like greetings message, so let's do that. Let's say minutes equals 5. Every 5 minutes it'll send a greetings, and then let's actually say every minute it's a heartbeat, just so we can debug this a little bit easier. And then in the actual normal configuration, or other people would call this the production configuration, even though there's no production here. So let's run the heartbeat every 30 minutes. So these objects that I'm using here, these time delta objects, these come from the built-in Python package datetime. And these are very convenient. I think these are some of my favorite ways of denoting time, and you can basically do simple things like this. They have minutes, hours, days, right? It's very easy to basically create very human-readable time objects. Okay, so we got a heartbeat every 30 minutes. We got max messages, let's say 3 every minute, or every 10 minutes, just to give it a longer timeout, and then auto message interval every hour. Okay. Let's put this here and bring this here, I guess. Where do we want to put this debug mode? I guess we can put it here, that's fine. And do that. Move this here. Control-Shift-G. Pull out defaults. All right, so the goal for today is to actually release this, you know. So one thing that they teach you at Y Combinator is, which is a startup accelerator, is you want to release early and often. You know, a lot of people wait for some magical moment to release, and they kind of just never end up releasing anything, you know, and that's no good. You want to be able to put things out there so that people can give you feedback. And one kind of rule of thumb that is a little bit weird, but I think actually the older I get, the more it makes sense, is if you're not embarrassed by your first release, you're waiting too long to release. So we're going to release this PaperBot at the end of the session today, and then we'll hopefully be embarrassed. So if you're joining for the first time, this is a Discord archive bot that we've been working on. It uses ChatGPT, or not GPT, but GPT-4, Palm, and it's kind of like almost like a little agent, right? It has different behaviors, and it uses the toolformer ability of these LLMs to basically decide which functions to call. And ultimately it does things like giving you information on authors or listing papers, or allows you to vote for papers and add papers. So it's kind of like a little paper bot. So right now we have this bot in our Discord channel, but it's only active in this bot debug channel. So hopefully by the end of today, we're going to put it into the actual paper channel, and you guys will be able to interact with it. So let's ask the PaperBot, can you chat with me? And hopefully I'm going to chat. Okay. Hey there. How can I assist you today? At PaperBot. Can you list the papers? I'm going to list papers. All right, here we go. And we ran into our first error here. Line 376, so I can just basically control and then click, and it'll take me exactly to that line. And it's saying none type has no attribute iter rows, which means that this object is none, which means that this object is none, which means that this is none. So something here happened where it basically got a whole bunch of nones. Let's put a breakpoint right there, and let's run the same exact behavior. At PaperBot, can you list papers? And then it should trigger the breakpoint. Oh no, it's not, because it's not even on. All right, now we got PaperBot is coming online. There he is. Oh, what the fuck happened here? I just opened up some weird search. Where's the breakpoint? There it is. Okay. So we triggered this sort or list papers here. This is a little bit too big. Let's keep going here. Okay, so sort by is none, so obviously it's not going to try to sort by anything, and then it's going to try to assign it to the self-df, which is potentially none. Yeah, so self-df should be a polars data frame, and if you do head, for example, none type has no attribute head. So basically this data frame is empty. So what's happening here is we need to create the actual file. So this was working before, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to GitHub, into PaperBot. I'm going to go to the commits, and I'm going to go to, let's say, for example, here, right? And you can click here, and it says browse the repository at this point in history. So I made some changes yesterday, but I know that it was working before that. So I'm going to go and browse this repository at an earlier point in history. I'm going to find the list papers here. Can't even see the Control F list papers. All right, so you see here this code hasn't changed, but what I'm interested in is this code here. No file path provided, read CSV, write CSV. Okay, so we basically need to create this file. Or even better, we need to basically have if self.df is none, return. So I think that's what we're going to do here. You can see here how, for example, for the get papers behavior, we have an auto return if you get nothing here. So let's do this. If self.df is none, return none, then let's actually go look at this list paper behavior. Oh no. You see, this is not going to work because this is going to be none. So one thing that I have noticed here is that, so as a database, we're not actually using a real database. We're basically using a fake little database that just wraps a pollers. And why don't we actually write that? A tiny database that is secretly a pandas data frame in a CSV file. All right, and it's not actually pandas. What we're using is actually called pollers, which is a kind of a cooler pandas. Okay, so this list papers right here, if you notice, right now this function is a function of this tinydb class, but if you actually go into this function and you click on the, for example, you highlight the self, you notice how it doesn't use anything. It only uses a single property of this data frame, which is, or of this class, which is this df object. So whenever you see this, that to me is telling me that this function doesn't probably need to be part of this class, right? We can actually probably get rid of this and put it, all of it, inside the list papers async function. So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to get rid of that. Right? It seems like we can basically clean up this tinydb class. So let's go clean up this tinydb class. Let's go back to our breakpoint, which is here in list papers, and we're going to combine these two functions. So get, sort by, and right here. So here's where we're going to basically insert this behavior. So come here, put this in here. And we no longer can use the self, right? Because this function is outside of that class. So now we actually basically need to use the db object. So if the data frame is none, return none. And we can just basically say, let's give a nice little error message right here. So boom. I think I had another pattern as well that I was using for the listing. Yeah, let's do this. No, we're slowly cleaning up, and that's kind of the way that I code, you know. Some people, the way that they code is very focused. They there's a thing they want to do, and they basically do that exact same thing. But the way that I code, I'm kind of distracted. So like I'm trying to do one thing, but then I notice a different thing, and I start working on that different thing, and I notice a different thing, and I start working on that different thing. And generally, you don't want to code like that because you'll end up with these diffs that change 10 different things. You generally want to change one thing at a time. But because this is a repo that only I am contributing to, I can basically do that, and that's totally fine. So different coding styles there. All right, so we're basically going to say too many no papers in database. And then let's do this. Put that there. And then we'll say sending message. Sending message. So this await channel.send, this is actually sending it to the Discord channel. So those messages are going to appear here. But then we also have specific log messages, and those are going to get put into a log file, which will be hidden from the users, but we'll be able to go and look at it. Let's move those down. We can actually, for example, use this walrus pattern again here. So if sort by, okay, df columns, I think needs to be db columns, dbdf columns, dbdf sort, you end up getting this sorted df object. Let's put a little underscore there just so we know it's a copy of the data frame, a local copy that's going to get thrown away. Raise value error, column does not exist in the data frame. That's fine. And then we're going to have to go through here. So go like this. And then here you see where it says enumerate. We're going to get rid of this original function call, and we're going to put that in there. And we're going to say df, which is going to be a pl.dataframe, is by default the actual data frame object. And then we'll do this. And then we'll put that there. All right, I think that's basically it. Then we enumerate through those. If you have more than num papers, break. If not, it creates these Discord embedding objects, and then it lists the papers. And let's make this a little bit better. Let's say sending message into the log info, and then here the message. Let's copy this emoji name. Do we want it to give you an emoji here? I don't know. I don't know if we want that. Let's just do this. No papers in database. Found papers. Listing. Just an off-topic question on Kate saying with the question here. How you got into the AI residency at Google, and also what level of knowledge and experience is required to get there. So I got into the AI residency. It was like a multi-part interview, right? But I think the reason they originally reached out to me is because I had some GitHub projects. So I had different GitHub projects that I had worked on. So let me go to my GitHub. Yeah, so at the time, I basically created this project here, GazeNet, and I also created Pirate AI. So these are basically, this was a synthetic data project. That's me in like whatever this is, 26 years ago. And this was a way of tracking where you're looking on the screen. So I've made this project. I also worked on a project, this one, Pirate AI. So this was a reinforcement learning in Unity with agents project that I worked on. So I had a little bit of stuff on my GitHub project, so I think, or my GitHub, so I think that's why they were interested in me. And then I got the interviews. The interviews themselves weren't like super difficult. It was like kind of like a standard LeetCode kind of programming interview, and then there was another one that was more kind of like statistics and machine learning. So I think if you're interested in, for example, any kind of like machine learning engineer role, like those are, you're going to get 2 interviews, and the interviews are basically going to be like a LeetCode programming interview, and then you're going to have like a machine learning interview. And the machine learning interview is going to be things like, it's probably going to be flavored depending on what type of machine learning you're doing, but it's usually simple things, right? Like statistics, distributions, probability, maybe some metrics, you know. So sometimes I give the advice of like, just get really good at the basics, and that's why I give that advice, right? Because the interviews themselves are generally tend to be how good do you know the basics. But anyways, I did those interviews, and then I got accepted into the residency program. And do they also choose undergrad? At the time, I had been at a couple jobs before, so I wasn't quite an undergrad, but when I went there, there was like maybe 20 or something like that other people in the same residency kind of group as me. And there was everything. There was some people that were fresh out of college, but then there was also people like me that were kind of medium age. And then there was actually some people that were like way older. There was like people who were like 35, you know, there was older people. And there was also a weird types of people. Like, for example, some people there were like a physics PhD, right? And like non-machine learning people, but like who had PhDs in related fields. And I think that's secretly why I got let in, because I had a pretty strong resume, but my resume was strong only in kind of robotics, right? So I was kind of strong resume in robotics. And I think they were interested in getting people from robotics and then seeing if that could basically, because at the time, basically people thought that deep reinforcement learning was the future, and that we were basically going to get AGI through deep reinforcement learning. So the AI residency program was trying to get a bunch of robotics people, teach them deep reinforcement learning, and then hopefully they were going to find AGI. But so I came through because of my robotics background, but other people were there because of their backgrounds in other fields. But at this point, that's like, whatever, 5-6 years ago. So I don't know if they have the same standards and requirements for the AI residency program nowadays. I assume nowadays they probably specifically want people who have machine learning undergrads. If that even exists. I don't know if machine learning undergrad is even a thing. Okay, let's come back up here. Hopefully that answered your question, Ankit, or Ankit. Save format document. Okay. So I like how we got rid of that function here. You see, we now have get papers, vote for papers, similarity search. We actually could do the same thing with these functions here. You see this vote for paper, get paper functions. I don't think these need to be part of the data frame class, to be honest. Yeah, let's do that. Where else is this similarity search used, for example? It's only used here. Maybe we don't need that. Let's open up this. I made a little text file. Let's come here. Let's run it. PaperBot has entered the chat at PaperBot. There's a paper. I'm going to add paper. Looking for similar papers. Oh, it found the exact same paper. Oh no, but the problem is that it found it because it's the paper. There's only one paper. Okay, so that's definitely a bug right here. When you add a paper and you look for similar papers, you shouldn't find the paper itself. Okay, so when you add a paper, I think we need to go to the actual async function here. So you add a paper. Paper was already posted. Add paper. For paper in similarity search. Looking for similar papers. I feel like this should be its own behavior, right? Does this return a paper object? No, you see this returns an actual... This returns a dictionary, which is not good. Ideally, we'd want this to return an object of the same archive result type, right? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say if I'm kind of like waffling here. It's like, do we want the add paper behavior to do this look for similar papers by default? Do we want that to be its own behavior? Do we want to exit out here? So as soon as you look for similar papers, do you want to ignore it but then still post the similar paper? Yeah, I think what we're going to do here is we're going to do this. We're going to say if paper title is the paper title, then continue, right? And then we're going to say here, if length of embeds is 0, then just return. And we'll actually send... Yeah, like that. Okay. So we can close out of that. And look at this, dude. This is something I discovered today, or yesterday, but... so our tiny database here, right, it's a CSV file. But I was like, wait, why don't I just literally make the extension to this the emoji? And you can do that. Turns out you can basically fucking do that. Like, how crazy is that? You can, let's go into our data. See that? Look at that. We have a CSV file, but then we also have an emoji, a PaperBot emoji. So, I don't know. We're going to make our, the file extension for the TinyDB CSV object. We're going to make that an emoji because why not, you know? I just thought that was pretty cool. Papers.csv. When did this get saved? Okay, this is old. Let's get rid of this. Delete. And this is what the log looks like. So, for example, the log, you want to basically have all the different things here. So you can see here calling chat, ignoring message, mentioned in message, function call detected, and as well as the time. So the log should be basically a superset of what gets printed out here. Control W to close, save, Control Shift 1 to rerun it. Let's go ahead and copy one of these random archive paper links here, and then we'll say at PaperBot, give it that link. And it should say, I'm going to add paper, so it's running the add paper behavior. It's adding the paper, it's looking for similar papers, and now it's found one paper, which is similar because currently right now there's only 2 papers in this database, right? If we actually open up the database file here, there's a lot of columns because it creates an embedding vector of the abstract, which you can use for similarity search, but largely there's only 2 things here, right? There's basically 2 papers and their embeddings. All right, perfect. Okay, so what other behavior should we check on? What about list papers? Let's try out that. Let's say at PaperBot, can you list the papers? I'm going to list the papers. And there you go, it voted. Or it listed the papers for you. And you see how they have votes 0 here? So that's something that we added in the last stream last week. So I think that we can actually at PaperBot, I want to vote for, and then I'll copy this link, copy link, and then say that. And then it says, I'm going to vote for paper. Okay, so it's running the vote for paper behavior, and then it died. So something happened. All right, here we go. Here's what happened. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Generally, I don't code at this level of zoom, you know, like, but because I'm doing live streaming, I kind of want you guys to be able to see what I'm looking at. So that's why I'm like so zoomed in right now. You know, it's kind of, I normally wouldn't code at this level. Okay, so ignoring message right here, line 377. First it calls line 499, right? So it calls this vote for paper behavior here. And then it, inside that behavior right here, the vote for paper behavior, it actually errors out right here, lengths of vote raw equals 0. Okay, so I think what we're going to end up doing for this is similar to what we just did for the list paper behavior, where I'm looking at this function, and right now this function is here inside the tinydb class, right? But if I actually go and I actually look at this function and I highlight, for example, self, I see that the only object of self that it uses is the data frame object, and then it also calls the save function. But we're not really like changing properties of the class inside this function. So that to me tells me that this function, I could probably pull it out of here. I could probably pull it out of this class and put it inside the other vote for paper function. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this, copy that out. Then I'm going to click on the original, this one here. I can't see anything. It's too zoomed in. Chat, we want the author info, share resources, vote for paper over here. So I'm going to put this here, and we're going to combine these two functions. So let's take this. User equals string user paper ID get short ID paper mask equals self.df ID equals paper ID. So let's take all this crap here. Return, and we're going to replace it here. So I've just combined these two functions, but now I'm inevitably going to run into some bugs. So let's make sure we're good here. So user, this should be message.author.id. So let's copy that. We'll put that there. Self.df, this is now going to be database.df, and this is a mask, so this is basically a conditional here, and it goes through and it finds all the rows in the data frame where the ID corresponds to paper ID. And actually we can probably do this. No, that's fine. If you guys have other questions, feel free to ask. You know, we're just kind of hanging out here. Paper ID with the database matches. You get the votes. Votes, length of votes raw. Votes raw dot split. Here you have returns. So we need to replace these returns with this. So delete this. Put this. We need to cut that. Put it here. Put it here. And put it here. Then we're going to do a little bit of fancy multi-cursor here. We're going to put a multi-cursor there. We're going to put a multi-cursor here, and we're going to put a multi-cursor here. We're going to copy all three of these. We're going to go up past the log and create this underscore message, which should be a string. We don't even need to put the type there. Okay. There we go. We don't need the return statement at the very end here. And I think here we should do this db.save. So it saves the database, and then db.update. All right. User has already voted for this paper. That's fine. Here, actually, instead of message.author.id, we should say message.author.name. So where's user? Votes.append user. Here we go, right here. Message.author.name. Then we send that message. And let's say sending message. We need to put an F string here. We're going to do a similar thing here. Paper is not in the database. Bring this down. Delete this. Let GitHub Copilot autocomplete that. You see it autocompletes it. Perfect. I think we can get rid of this user variable here. I think maybe we can move it down here. This seems to be the only place we use it. See, we use it here, 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 and here. Here we can copy this message.author.name. That's the one that we want to actually be sending out to the channel. So message author name has voted. Bring this down. Make our logs consistent. And here, instead of user, let's call it, we hit F2 to refactor, and let's call it user ID because this is now the actual user ID. Okay. All right, so that seems cleaner now. Right, we have taken this vote for paper function, which used to be partially inside our class and then partially inside, or partially as an async, and we just got rid of it. So now we're seeing this TinyDB object just getting simpler and simpler over time, which is a good thing. There's still a couple holdouts here. We still have similarity search and we still have get papers, but how many things call this get paper function? Let's see. It's really just that. And we don't even do anything with it. You see that? I feel like this get paper function is actually pointless. We're just getting an ID and then we return none, and then even if you return this, we don't even use it. What's the difference between find paper and get paper? Find paper is finding the actual paper with the regex. So how many of these are there? There's 3 uses of find paper. Let's rename this because it's a little bit confusing. Let's call it find paper ID in message. So we'll refactor that so it's a little bit cleaner. Actually, I don't like the paper underscore ID. Let's just call it paper ID in message. Save, little refactor. And let's put a breakpoint in this function that we just created here, the vote for paper. And we will run this. Let's go ahead and run it. And let's say at PaperBot. Going to add paper. Okay, hit a breakpoint here. It's returning the information from this paper. I also don't like how it's get papers. You see how there's an S there? It's really just returning a single dictionary. So it's almost like returning a row. So I feel like the S is misleading. It makes you think it's yielding, but it's not. It's returning just one. Okay, but if we toggle that breakpoint off and then keep going, what happens? The paper was already posted. Okay, that's totally fine. Let's try to vote for it then. At PaperBot, vote for paper this. Okay, so now we're inside the function that we just changed. Okay, so we're voting for the paper. We're trying to find the paper ID in the paper. That's fine. It found the paper. Now you see how this paper is an archive result object, which is coming from the archive module. Found the paper, paper mask. That seems fine. Paper mask. It's a shape of 2. There's only 2 elements or 2 rows inside this database. Paper is not in the database. It is in the database, so it did find it. Creates a data frame of matches. You see this dot head 1 only returns the top match. So it'll only return the top match. I think we can actually do the same thing here. So in our get papers, match equals self dot row by predicate dot ID. Actually, I don't even think we need that. We're getting distracted. Let's go back down. Votes raw equals match df votes to list. Okay, so this is where it started to error out. So let's actually see what this looks like. Control Shift 7, which I have bound to open up a debug console, and there we go. Okay, so this is the votes as a list. So you can see how this is a integer. Maybe there's something wrong there. We might have to convert this into a string. Yeah. So let's do this. Let's cast this into a string. Then we keep going. Then we create the list of empty strings. That's fine. Length of votes raw is greater than 0. We split it with a comma. That's totally fine. What happened there? Object of type int has no length. Okay, so this is the error we were running into, which is the error we just fixed, is that votes raw, because we're using the user ID, is an integer, or it was being inferred as an integer, but really what we wanted is a string. So votes count. Votes user. Add paper. User equals message.authorID. So right here, this is the problem, is that we need to basically do this. All right, close out, clear our breakpoint, rerun. PaperBot has entered the chat. At PaperBot, vote for the paper. Hupo has already voted for this paper. Okay, well, can I vote for a different paper? Let's get this one. Copy text or copy link. At PaperBot, vote for this paper. Hupo has already voted for that paper. All right, well then, at PaperBot, list the papers sorted by votes. Listing papers, and unfortunately says votes equals 0. So what's going on there? Okay, but at least this is running without bugs. So why don't we just Control-Shift-G right here? We're gonna add this, and you see how here this our database file got added into the GitHub changes, and I don't want that. I want I don't want those in there. So I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna say data, and I'm gonna add the data directory, which is where that file is, into the git ignore, and Git's gonna ignore it. So you see if I don't have that, right? It says, oh, you must want to add that inside the data folder. But I'm like, no, I want nothing inside the data folder to be added. And it's like, oh, okay. So let's do that. Let's do vote for paper outside TinyDB. We'll commit. I'm kind of a commit often and frequently kind of guy, you know, but other people are not like that. Other people, especially people who work in code bases that have a lot of people working in them, they generally tend to try to make their commits semantically meaningful. So like they spend a lot of time making sure that each commit is only related to one change and that it's readable and so on. But I don't even know if that's going to be the case anymore. I feel like more and more, as you have kind of LLMs and AIs kind of within the code contribution process, I think the need to have good commit messages, the need to kind of do all these like best practices is going to start disappearing, right? Just something to think about. Let's also format this document. Control-Shift-I, let it auto-format for us. All right, and basically what was happening here is that this votes column is not being updated. So you see, probably what's happening here is that we're updating the data frame with the matches data frame, but we're not setting this equal to anything. Right, so really what we want is this db.df equals, and I don't really like this either. This seems kind of sketchy as hell, right? You're changing a property of a class outside of the class. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put this in a temporary variable here called df, and I'm going to send that df variable into this save. And here in the save, we're going to basically accept a data frame object, and we're going to say if data frame is not none, then overwrite our database with that. So I mean, this is heinous for a million other reasons, right? Any of you that work in like actual production databases, like the idea of having a function that literally overwrites your entire database with a new object is a huge security vulnerability. But PaperBot doesn't care, you know. PaperBot is eternal, and PaperBot will persevere. Okay, so let's go back down here. df, we save with the df object. This matches df. I don't think we need this name anymore, right? This variable here, this matches df, we keep overwriting it. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to actually hit F2 here. We're going to refactor this. We're going to rename it underscore df to really cement the fact that this is just, no, let's keep that there. This is just a temporary variable that just gets overwritten 10 times and then gets deleted as soon as we exit the local scope of this function. So that's generally what I try to indicate with these underscore variables, is local variables that are deleted. So for example, this would probably be also an underscore variable, but I think that would then fuck with the readability of it. So let's save that. Let's rerun it. I think let's delete this. Close out of that. Let's restart it. So let's delete our brain. Oh shit, I think we deleted the, come back here, undo the delete, restore file. Oh no, did we just get rid of all the changes that we just did? Oh no, alright, we need to redo those. That's really unfortunate. Alright, so we redid the save. Then let's come back down here. Vote for paper. Pass the df here. And rename this to df. And make sure this is here. And actually, we can just do this. We don't need to save it intermediately here. We can just do this. All right, there we go. And now let's run it. Okay, PaperBot has entered the chat. Let's paste a couple papers here. So it should find I'm going to add paper. Adding paper, looking for similar papers. Something happened. Looking for similar papers, ignoring message from self. Nothing happened. It got stuck on looking for papers. So here in add papers, for paper, await, 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 continue. If length embeds equals 0, return. So it ends. So you see, that's the problem. I think what we want here is continue, right? Because this continue will break out of this for loop here, where it's actually finding similar papers. But this continue here, we want it to break out of this for loop up here, which is what we want. So let's save that. Let's actually delete our database again, and then we'll run this entire thing again. Control-Shift-8, Control-Shift-1 to rerun it. PaperBot has entered the chat at PaperBot. Given it those three, okay, it's running the add paper behaviors. Adding papers, it's going to look for similar paper. I don't like that it looks for similar papers 3 times in a row, I guess, but looking for similar papers, it found similarity of 0.81 to the paper that was added right here. And then when you add the third paper, it finds a similarity of 0.85 and a similarity of 0.07 or 0.7 to the 2 papers. So now our, if we do at PaperBot list the papers, here are the 3 papers. All 3 of them has 0 votes, which is good. And let's go ahead and pick one of these random ones and say vote for paper. At PaperBot, vote for this paper. I'm going to vote for paper. Hoopo has already voted for this paper. Okay, so what is going on here? All right, it says that we've already voted for the paper, but how does that make any sense, right? Well, I think what's happening here is that when you add the paper right here in db.addPaper, you see how we say votes equals user. So the person who submits the paper counts as having voted for the paper, but you need to basically do this. You need to, the reason the votes say 0 is because even though we count the user as having voted for this paper, we don't have, the votes were set to 0, so we need to do this. Or we could just basically set this to blank and set it to 0, but I kind of like the idea of like whenever you submit a paper, it automatically votes for it. Okay, that's fine. We're going to save that. I'm going to close this. Do we even need this user field? Like, does this ever get used? Probably not. Okay, but at least that works. So let's go into our commit here and we'll go ahead and save this. Overwrite db on vote. All right, take a little sip of this yerba mate. All right, I think another thing we want to check is we want to check all these kind of like heartbeat and lifespan behaviors. So up here at the top, I added a couple different things here in, so we're in debug mode, right? I added a lifespan, a heartbeat, and a max messages. So why don't we do this? Let's make max messages 2. And this means that if I send more than 2 messages to PaperBot in a minute, it should trigger a kind of like a standoff. So I'm going to run that. PaperBot has entered the chat. I'm going to say at PaperBot, chat with me. At PaperBot, chat with me. At PaperBot, chat with me. Okay, so you see it's kind of like ignoring what's going on. It's ignoring, but it's not telling me that it's ignoring me, so that's not good, right? Ideally, I would want it to tell me that, hey, you've sent too many messages. So here on message, mentioned in message, if length of message cache is greater than or equal to the max messages, I am busy, please wait, and it returns. So we didn't see that I am busy, please wait. Do we see it in our log file? So if we open this back up, calling chat, ignoring message from self. Okay, so did it even get to that point? Function call detected chat. Function call detected chat. Calling behavior chat, ignoring message. Let's put a breakpoint right here. I kind of want to see how fast it gets this. All right, we're going to kill that. I'm going to rerun it. At PaperBot hello. All right, triggers here. Length of the max messages should be 2. Length of the message cache here, if we do Control-Shift-7 to open up a debug console and run this, it's 0. Okay, so that's fine. Keep going. let's run it again. At PaperBot hello. All right, so now the length of message cache should be 1, and max messages is still 0. That's fine. Let's run it again. At PaperBot hello. Now it should actually be, there you go, I am busy, and then send that message. I am busy, please wait. Okay. So we are correctly sending a timeout here. Okay. Now, what other behavior do we want to check? We want to check the auto message interval. So the auto message interval determines how often the bot will basically just send a random message to the chat. So let's make it so that every 10 seconds it sends a message, and then we should be able to see that. So let's go to the auto message interval, and then right here, if datetime minus now is greater than or equal to self.auto message interval, say something short and funny, and then it sends that. Okay. I think we can actually probably do this. Get rid of that. Okay. And we're coming back. And we should be able to wait 10 seconds, and it should hopefully trigger and send something funny to the chat. Has it been 10 seconds yet? Probably. This is also happening inside the heartbeat function. So actually, you know what's probably going wrong here is that the heartbeat is longer than the 10 seconds. So I think we need to change this heartbeat. Heartbeat interval is 1 minute. Let's change the heartbeat to or heartbeat should be, I don't know, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 3 seconds. Let's do 3 seconds. So it's just super fast. And then let's make this 5 seconds. So the bot's going to be very, very quickly spamming the chat, which is fine. We're debugging. PaperBot has entered the chat. In 3 seconds, it should hit the heartbeat. And then in 5 seconds, it should send the message. Neither of those has happened, so that's kind of suspicious, right? All right. So let's go into our actual heartbeat function here. Heartbeat, await, wait until ready. While self is not closed, let's do this. Let's put breakpoints here, here, here. Heartbeat interval, total seconds. Let's put a breakpoint there. And let's rerun this. Okay, we're getting that. That's fine. Oh, there we go. Program death. That doesn't happen. Huh. It broke as soon as this happened. You see that? It went here, evaluated, and then died. Did it actually run into this, for example? Let's see. Kill it, rerun it. Wait. Keep going, keep going, keep going. hits that. Doesn't evaluate. How come it doesn't hit this part, right? That's a little weird. Huh. It's very suspicious. We should have a last heartbeat, I think is what's going on here. So if we put some logging here, we should have a logging that basically prints this out here, because I don't know what the fuck start time is. What is start time? Start time, start time. Ah, you see? Here you go. This is what's happening, is that self.start time right here, this doesn't even exist. So we need to actually create that. It's kind of weird that that's, let's call it self.birthdate. Make that a datetime object. You know, lifespan and birthday. We got to anthropomorphize our little robot here. You see, look at this. Whenever the current time minus the birth date is less than the is greater than the lifespan, then I tell it to say a message. I make sure to give it a peaceful death here. You know, I tell it you have been a good PaperBot. Say goodbye to your friends, and then it kills itself. So you got to make sure to program the death of your autonomous agents. It's the best way to do AI safety, is to give them a death date. Which I think is what they do in that movie with the movie with the replicants and Harrison Ford, Blade Runner, right? The robots in that movie, they have like a very short lifespan. They basically automatically die after a certain amount of time, and it prevents the robots or the replicants, which are effectively AGI, they're super intelligent, but in order to prevent them from messing up too many things, they basically give them this like programmed death, you know, so they can't live too long. Okay, so here you go. Finally, we're getting the behavior of automatically posting every X amount of time. Let's clear all of our breakpoints and see what it looks like just without any breakpoints. Erland Hillman, no, it will make us sad. Yeah. I think it's totally fine. You know, I think that the brevity of life makes it more beautiful, you know, so I think that also applies to little chatbots. Okay, so let's make the lifespan a little shorter too. Let's make the lifespan 20 seconds. Kill it. So it's only going to live for 20 seconds. Every 3 seconds it'll have a heartbeat, and every 3 seconds, let's do every 5 seconds, it will automatically post a message. And let's run it. Okay, so PaperBot has entered the chat. There you go, one message. It kind of really likes this joke. It kind of always says this joke all the time. Why did the tomato turn red? Okay, it's got like about 5 more seconds before it dies, and then here it is. Here's its little goodbye message. Goodbye, friends. It was great chatting with you. Have a wonderful day. And it's gone. And little PaperBot is no longer. So long, little PaperBot. You know, let's do actually this. So here on the disconnect, right now we're just disconnecting, but let's get a little bit more savage here. Let's do this. Let's make a little gravestone for gravestone emoji. Give it to me. Oh my god. ChatGPT. Gravestone emoji. This one. Headstone. Deny. Copy. Alright, so when it actually dies, it'll send a little gravestone. Okay. Let's save this. Control save. Control Shift G. We'll say heartbeat lifespan. Commit that, sync that. Okay. Now let's actually think about what. Let's make this a little bit longer, just so for next time we debug, we don't have to do this crazy. So let's do minutes. 5 minutes, it dies. Time delta of 3 is the heartbeat. Max messages of 5. Of 2 per minute, let's say 5 per minute. And auto message interval every 1 minute. Okay. Whenever we're actually going to release this into the actual papers, which is the main Discord channel here where people actually do post papers, let's make the lifespan 3 days. That seems fine. The heartbeat will happen every 30 minutes. Let's make that a little bit shorter. Let's do 5-minute heartbeat. Max messages, let's do 3 per minute. And let's do the auto message every hour. All right. Max tokens of 64. Let's make that a little bit shorter. I kind of want to make it shorter just because I feel like some of you are going to try to spam this. And then as soon as I let you spam this, you guys are going to burn all my OpenAI tokens. So I don't know. We'll leave it at that. Okay. Let's save here. We should. Can we delete anything else? I'm going to scroll through. So I'm going to Control F and I'm going to Control F to do. So whenever I think about random things I want to do in this, I make a little to do comment, and these are pretty popular. Another way to actually do this, if you have multiple people in a code base, it's actually common to do this as well. So you could basically do this, and that will tell people who actually came up with this to do. But obviously I'm the only person coding here, so I don't need to say what my to-dos are. Okay, so I have scrape latest info. I wanted to scrape these and maybe populate. That's a lot of work though. Potentially a different LLM through Hugging Face. That's also a lot of work. Return priority queue for papers. That could be done. Weekly greetings. Greetings based on the dates and season. Display author name rather than ID. I think we actually did do that. Render the CSV file to Markdown and post it on the GitHub repo automatically. Announcements on the start of every week. And then voting results. And programmed death. That's fine. Okay. So there's no to-dos for us to necessarily do here. One thing that we do need is if debug mode. Here we set the logger dot set level. This is not the correct way to do it. Set. Let's see if Copilot can tell us how to set this. Set logging to debug. Logging.getLogger set level debug. See that? And then we're going to go up here and we're going to set the normal logging level to, ooh, actually we don't have the logger yet. Yeah, let's actually do this. So we'll put that there. The default log level will be debug if we get into debug mode. If not, it'll be info, which I think is the default anyway, so we can basically get rid of that line of code probably. Stream handler, the stream handler, actually we want to set it to debug. The stream is the actual file. So when we actually write, see this FH is the file handler, and then this is the actual one that gets sent to this thing here. You see? So you can set the different levels for the different loggers. What do we actually want though? Do we want, I feel like we want the file handler to be debug and then the channel to be info. Or do we want all of these to be at the same debug level? Yeah, I feel like that's actually the better way to do it. Okay, so let's go here. Let's set this, and let's change this logging.debug here. Rather than setting it there, let's make a new variable here. We're going to call it debug level. And we're going to set it that. And I think this is actually an enum. So if you actually go into the logging module, you see how here debug is just a number, right? It's because a very cheap way of storing a choice is through integers, right? So if you actually look at most, for example, classification data sets, they don't store the name of the class. They store an integer, and then they have a dictionary or some kind of map that says this integer corresponds to this class. Because it's a lot cheaper to store an integer, such as the number 10, than it is to store a string that could be very long, right? Like maybe in classification data set, you might have a very long string as the name. So generally people prefer integers if you're, and that there's actually a better name for that, and it's called enumbers, right? Enum. So if you ever see that, it's basically just a one of X choices that's being stored as an integer. Okay, so now that we have that debug level, and then here, let's say debug level equals logging dot info, and let's use this debug level variable here for our handlers. Okay, so why do we need to add this? Well, the reason we need to add this is I think next thing what we're going to do here is we're going to go and we're going to look for every single instance of log.info. And before you release anything into production, you want to make sure to remove all your print statements and remove any log statements, because those can generally kind of slow things down. So let's go through all of our log statements and let's see which one of these do we want to be info and which one of these do we want to be debug. So I feel like we don't really need to say this. Let's make these debug. So these will be debug. Let's see. Let's just search for log dot. Let's keep going here. Log dot debug, that's fine. That's the right scope. Log dot warning, I think that's also fine. And then log dot info here. Let's make this a debug. Log.warning, that's fine. Log.debug. What about this one? Other keys. Okay, so whenever you set the keys, this is all fine. Okay. Log.debug, function call to GPT. I think that's also correct. Log.debug. .info, function call detected. Do we want this to be info or debug? I think That's debug. This should be info. I feel like we need at least one behavior. So we'll leave that there. Log.warning, those are all fine. Loading existing DB, that feels like it should be fine. Saved DB, that should be fine as well. Found paper, that's okay. This is fine, this is fine. This is fine. Sending message, that's also fine. Here, sending message, that's fine. Found paper, that's fine. Sending message, fine. Sending message. Listing the sources. I feel like we don't need this one. Let's make this a debug. On ready. Moji has entered the chat. Why don't we actually change this right here, this on ready? Let's make it similar to this. So let's have ChatGPT come up with a little message on the ready as well. So close this, close that. Nope. We want sending message. Get channel. Say hello to chat. Okay, that's fine. All right, we're still looking at the logs though. Sending message, sending. Mentioned in message, I feel like this should be a debug. I am busy, please wait. Let's move that down. Calling this. That should also be a debug. Log.info disconnected, that's fine. Starting, setting keys, starting bot. All of those being info is fine. Okay. So we basically went through and we kind of cleaned up a little bit of our print statements. In this case, we're using, of course, the logging Python package. So really they're log statements. But we cleaned them up a little bit just so there's less clutter. Let's go ahead and hit the format document. It'll clean up, format everything for us. And actually, here's a little kind of interesting, cool Copilot that I found. So if you come here, right, look at this. You see how it's complaining about this. Ooh, what the fuck? Right, so here. Save. I guess there's no complaints. Okay, let me see. Format document. All right, but anyways, there's a way to like auto fix errors with, or auto fix linting situations with chat. Like for example, let me see if I can find a useful one. Where is it? ¿Dónde está? Okay. Yeah, let's say this. Let's say you had this, right? You put that like that. Right? So you see this yellow line, and that's the linter telling you, hey, this line is too long. So Usually you could just basically fix those manually, or the linter generally fixes those, but sometimes like the spacing is kind of weird and the solutions it gives you are kind of shit. So one thing you can actually do now, which I've found, is you can come here, you see how it says line too long, you right click on this and then it says fix using Copilot, and you fix it, and it'll actually go and it'll use GitHub Copilot and it'll fix it. So you see here, there's the solution that it gave you, and you can actually hit accept. So I found that GitHub Copilot is better at linting than the automatic linters that you use, right? So linters that you use like rough and isort and those kind of things, they're in black and autopep. Those are basically heuristic based. So there's like rules on how to format things. But sometimes, like whenever you have kind of weird objects like lists that are inside a Quark, and that you have like for example this, like these types of weird formatting things, the auto linters are actually worse than Copilot. Copilot actually comes up with cleaner ways of formatting, which is low-key kind of super interesting, because it means that the day of heuristic-based linting is actually coming to an end, and I can see a future where you actually only use LLMs to lint, just because LLMs are just better at formatting. So I don't know if you guys are thinking about cool ideas to implement. I think a LLM-based linter is guaranteed to kind of basically get used, right? So you can think of some GitHub action that uses an LLM to format your code, instead of what people do now, where they basically have these commit hooks that lint on commit usually. Okay, so logging cleanup, sync changes. And I think we're pretty much good. Are you guys ready to release this? I think we're going to release this. Let's do one last run with the debug here on bot debug, and then we will run it. So let's run it one last time here on the bot debug channel. Rate limit error. Oh my God, we ran out of OpenAI messages. Oh. Okay, so here in line 679, it's trying to say hello to the chat and it's running out. Okay. Hopefully we can still run this. Let's run it. Okay. Hello, chat. I'm PaperBot. How can I assist you today? At PaperBot. Can you list the papers for me? Sometimes it doesn't respond. But it's not even our code. It's literally just OpenAI. Or not OpenAI, Discord. Okay, there you go. There's some papers. Pretty cool. At PaperBot, what are the sources you use for papers? There you go. It's sending random messages. Here are some sources. Okay, nice. Okay, so our little PaperBot is going. Why did the tomato turn red? We're going to kill it before we nuke our OpenAI quota. But pretty good. All right, let's save this and let's run it in production, guys. Let's do it. So all we got to do now is we got to basically change this debug mode. We're going to uncomment that and comment that. So now it's going to be in real mode. And every hour it'll send a message. Max messages 3 per minute, blah, blah, blah. And let's actually reset the data here. So we're going to actually delete that. Delete this, delete that. Save, commit, production, released, exclamation mark. I don't know if you want to put exclamation marks. And then commit. All right. So now, rather than running it in debug mode there, let's come here and we're gonna run it here. Actually, we need to conda activate PaperBot. We have a conda environment specifically for this robot, and let's run it. And there we go. At here. PaperBot is here for around 3 days, its lifespan, and can do things like archive. Feel free to give it archive papers and vote for those archive papers. I'm gonna ping 30 people. That's fine. Okay, so if you guys are actually there and you have Discord open, you can actually send a message to it right now in the papers channel, and then it'll reply to you. So I'm going to let this run. And obviously don't make me regret this, because technically you guys can spam the shit out of PaperBot. You could put all kind of heinous words in here, and then it'll go through my OpenAI API, and then OpenAI will call me and say, hey, why are you sending requests that have all these swear words in it? But you know, I generally tend to trust humanity, so I'm gonna trust you guys to not ask PaperBot to do things that'll get me in trouble. What are we at? 1 hour 39? Dude, this is barely a stream. Okay. I'm going to take another sip here. That's fine, though. I'm going to put that there. PaperBot is here. All right, and now we just wait. Now we just wait for 3 days, and I'll come back and periodically check on this, and what I'm going to be looking for is that it doesn't error out. But as with anything else in the world, obviously, as soon as you put it out into the real world, it's going to figure out some new way of dying that you didn't think about. So what are we going to do in the next 30 minutes? Let's see. We can kind of do a sneak peek of the iJEPA paper. So this is a paper that I'm going to be reading tomorrow. It seems to have some hype. But specifically, I think the hype comes from the fact that Jan LeCun is personally putting his name on it. And CVPR is this week, I think. Yeah, CVPR 2023. There might even be live streams, to be honest. You guys could be listening to cooler stuff than me. Let's go to the workshops. So you have some workshops here. Multi-view 3D learning, video generation, robotics. Do they have any interesting robotics ones? Fourth embodied AI. Visual pre-training for robotics, scene understanding, video understanding, AI for content generation, efficient CV, CV for social good, AR, VR, computer vision for mixed reality. Sometimes they stream these, but oftentimes they do not. Yeah, this is the problem. CVPR, you have to sign in and register. This is the problem. So, like, academia is kind of stuck in this situation right now where these companies, these journals, right, they're basically companies, and they just are hungry for money. And it's kind of outrageous that in order to submit a paper for them to publish it, you need to basically pay them money. And not only that, but then if you want to look at any of these streams, you probably have to pay them money. Probably have to pay virtual registration fees. I guess they have a little tweet list here. Hashtag CVPR23. I don't want to sign into Twitter. But, okay. So iJEPA is basically the showcase piece for Meta at CVPR. Train a 632 million parameter visual transformer using 16 A100s in under 72 hours. State-of-the-art performance for low shot classification on ImageNet. Only 12 labeled examples per class. So zero shot classification means you are not doing any additional fine-tuning, but here they're basically doing fine-tuning with 12 labeled examples. Joint embedding, generative, joint embedding, predictive. X is probably the input, and then Y is probably the target, so this would probably be the image and then the class. The image gets encoded, the target gets encoded, and then you have some kind of distance metric here. DSY. As soon as I see anything cut up like this into these little squares, I think vision transformer. Yeah, so you see that, it's a vision transformer. Learns to model the semantics of the world. For each image, the portion outside that is encoded and given to the predictor as context. The predictor outputs a representation for what it expects. Okay. So these different styles here means that they've probably created some embedding space that tries to separate out the style of a thing with the actual semantic content of a thing, which is kind of difficult to do, so I wonder how they actually do that. Still using vision transformers. It would have been cool if someone comes up with a better thing than VITs, but I think those are there to stay. Cool. So I thought this was going to take a little bit longer, guys, but it hasn't, so... Oh, look at this. Add PaperBot. How do I vote? You say vote for... You have a message that contains the word vote and the word and the archive link. So at PaperBot, vote for this. Look at that. At PaperBot. What are the top voted for papers? There you go. Yeah, and it's not it's using the LLM to determine the behavior. So you probably don't need to use the word vote, but I think if you use the word vote, it'll know. Look at that, dude. This is pretty cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks for interacting with a little PaperBot here, you know? Look at him. He's living. He's living his best life, dude. PaperBot is having fun. At PaperBot. How does it feel to serve the community? You are loved. All right, it says I'm busy, please wait. So the message queue gets deleted on the heartbeat, so hopefully we will see message cache, which determines the I am busy, gets deleted every n amount of time, so might have to wait. So you see there's a potential bug that we might have run into there, right? Where we might not, he might just get, or PaperBot might get stuck in this I am busy, please wait kind of situation. All right, pretty cool. Pretty cool. I think I'm going to end it there. This is a pretty short stream, guys, but I don't know what else to do. I think I'm just going to stall, so I'll give you guys the time back, and I'll go do something more productive while you guys sit here and try to destroy PaperBot. But thanks for listening. Hope that's useful. Definitely go and talk to PaperBot and try to break it, but be nice and have a great day.